Welcome to Rock of Truth Radio. This is the Seven Mysteries of Christmas, a Christmas week initiation into the birth of the Christ Self, running from December 19th to December 25th, a teaching series on Rock of Truth Radio. Grace and peace to you, beloved. Welcome back to our Christmas week journey on Rock of Truth Radio. You're listening with Mr. Minister Joseph Anthony, and tonight we continue step by step through the living mysteries of Christmas. This week is not about rushing into a holiday memory. It is about walking through a spiritual pattern that many of us have lived, even if we did not have words for it. On day one, we spoke about the night. We learned that the darkness is not always punishment. Sometimes it is a womb. Sometimes God quiets the outer world so something new can begin inside. On day two, we spoke about the virgin birth. We learned that the virgin does not only mean a body, it also points to a place in the soul that has not been fully owned by fear, shame, or the past. A place that can still say yes, a place where God can conceive a new life within you. And now, tonight, on day three, we move into the next part of the pattern because once something is conceived, the next question becomes simple. How do I follow it? How do I know where to go next? How do I keep moving when the path is not clear? How do I walk forward when I cannot see the whole future? This is where the star enters the story. In the Christmas account, the wise men say, "We have seen his star." That star was not just decoration in the sky. It was guidance, it was direction, it was a sign that something real had been born. Metaphysically, the star represents the inner guidance that appears after the soul has agreed to carry the Christ life. Many people want guidance before they consent. They want a full plan before they say yes. They want proof before they commit. But spirit often works the other way. First comes the inner stirring, then comes the consent, then comes the direction. That is why some people feel stuck. It's not always because God is silent, it's because they are still holding back their yes. But when the soul truly agrees, even quietly, something begins to shift. A light appears inside, not a loud voice, not a full roadmap, but a sense of direction that was not there before. Tonight, we are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the star really is and how it works. And we're also going to talk about the wise men in the story. Because the wise men are not only characters in a scene, they also represent what awakens inside you when the Christ life begins to grow. We call them tonight the three wise functions of consciousness. Gold, the inner knowing of your worth and divine value. Frankincense, the awakening of spiritual perception and inner discernment. And myrrh, the willingness to release the old self so the new can rise. They are real inner movements. When these three begin to wake up in you, you start to travel differently. You stop living only from fear. You stop living only from reaction. You stop living only from the old identity. You begin to follow the light. And beloved, if you have been feeling a pull lately, a quiet draw forward, a sense that something is calling you higher, even if you cannot explain it, this message is for you. Tonight is day three of our Christmas week special, the Seven Mysteries of Christmas. And tonight we are speaking on the star and the three wise functions of consciousness. Let's step into the story together. Spirit follows its own order. It does not rush, does not skip steps, does not rearrange itself to fit our presence or preferences. First comes the night. the quiet season where something old ends and something new prepares to begin. Then comes the virgin ground, the place in the soul that can still receive truth without resistance. And then comes the whispered yes, not spoken to impress anyone, but spoken inwardly and honestly. And only after that does the star appear. This is where many people become confused in their spiritual life. They say, why don't I know what to do next? Why does God feel distance? Why can't I see my direction? Often it is not because God is hiding, it is because the soul is still negotiating, still bargaining, still asking for proof, still wanting guarantees before committing. But spirit does not give guidance to indecision. Guidance follows agreement. The star does not rise while the soul is arguing. It rises when the soul consents. When the soul says a quiet, sincere yes, not to a specific outcome, not to a detailed plan, but to the life God is forming within, something shifts. The inner sky begins to brighten, not all at once, not with loud signs or dramatic voices, but a direction appears in you. Sense of movement awakens, a pull towards something truer than the old way of living. This is not desire, it is destiny stirring in you. It feels different from chasing, it feels different from ambition. It feels like recognition. Metaphysically, the star represents inner guidance, a light of understanding that begins to lead you forward once the Christ life has been conceived. And this is important to understand. The star does not explain your whole future. It does not show you every step. It simply points enough to take the next step, enough to keep you moving, enough to build trust. Beloved, the star only rises for those who have conceived something new within themselves, not for those still debating whether they want to change, not for those still trying to control the outcome, but for those who have said, even quietly, yes, I will carry this. Yes, I will walk with what God is forming in me. And yes, I will move forward even without the full clarity. For those souls, the light appears. And once it does, that journey begins. In the old story, the star moves across the heavens. It travels through the night sky, guiding the wise men toward the place where the child is. But in your story, star does not move across the sky. It moves across your consciousness. The star is not a location you arrive at. It is a direction you learn to follow. It's not a map with marked coordinates. It is a pull on the heart, a quiet draw forward. Many people are waiting for God to give them a full blueprint for their life. They want to know, what is the plan? Where will this lead? How will this turn out? But the star does not shine a spotlight on your entire future, does not explain every turn in the road, does not remove every risk. It simply points. And your part in this relationship with God is not certainty, it is obedience. If God gave you the entire map, you would not need to trust him. You would only need confidence. And confidence feeds the ego, not the soul. If God showed you the whole journey at once, your mind would try to control it. Your fears would analyze it. Your past would interfere with it. So the spirit gives light in portions, enough light to take the next step, enough clarity to move forward, and enough direction to keep you from going back. But not so much light that you stop listening. This is why the star sometimes feels bright and other times feels faint. Not because it has changed, but because you are learning how to follow it. The stars teaches humility, teaches patience, teaches trust. It invites you into a relationship contract. It does not say, here is everything. It says, walk with me, one step at a time. And as you follow the star this way, something important happens. You stop demanding certainty. You stop trying to control the outcomes. You begin to trust the process. Beloved, this is how the Christ life is guided within you, not by force, not by fear, but just a steady, faithful light that leads those who are willing to move and follow it. And when you learn to follow that light, even when you cannot see the whole way, you discover something sacred. God has been guiding you all along, not towards a place, but towards a becoming. Why the east? Because the east is the direction of the sunrise. It is where light breaks through darkness. It is where the new day begins. Metaphysically, the east represents awakening consciousness. It is the place within you where awareness rises, where understanding begins to dawn, where the truth starts to become visible. This is why the wise men always come from the east. They do not begin their journey in confusion. They begin it in an awakening. The wise men inside you are parts of your consciousness that are ready to see, they're ready to learn, and ready to move forward. They begin in the place where you are willing to face the light. Some people never make this journey because they remain standing in their west. The west is the direction of the setting sun. It represents decline. It represents endings in old patterns. Standing in the west means living from old habits, past identities, former wounds, repeated disappointments. It means trying to pull God into your history instead of following God into your future. The Christ is never revealed behind you. Christ is always ahead of you. The star does not rise where you have been. It rises where you are becoming. This is why spiritual growth always requires a turning. Cannot face east while clinging to the west. You cannot move toward the light while staring at what has already set. Facing east means choosing to orient your life toward the truth instead of familiarity, toward growth instead of comfort, and toward awakening instead of repetition. And hear this carefully. The east is not a physical direction, it's an inner decision. It is the moment you say, I am willing to see, I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to move forward, even if I do not know exactly where this will lead. Beloved, when you turn towards your east, the star becomes visible. The wise functions awaken, and the journey begins. And the Christ you are seeking is already waiting, not your past, but in the light rising before you. The wise men are not three literal kings traveling across a desert with crowns and camels. They are symbols. They represent inner functions of consciousness, as we've been saying, that awaken once the Christ life has been conceived within the soul. When something new is born inside you, your inner life begins to reorganize itself. New capacities rise, new ways of seeing emerge, new movements of awareness begin their journey. These are the wise men. Scripture names them by gifts they carry because the gifts reveal what each function does. Gold, the recognition of your divine value. Gold represents worth, not ego, not pride, not superiority. Gold is the quiet realization. I come from God. My life has meaning. I am not an accident. There is something in me worth protecting and developing. When the function awakens, you stop measuring your value by approval, performance, or what the outside world thinks, or comparing yourself to other individuals. You stop shrinking yourself to survive. You stop begging to be seen and you stop living under labels created by fear or history. You begin to stand differently, not louder, steadier, not arrogant, grounded. This is the gold the wise man carries. It is the inner knowing of your divine origin. Then we have frankincense. That's the awakening of the spiritual perception. Frankincense was used in temples. It represents awareness, your intuition, and your inner sight. The function awakens your ability to perceive spirit beyond words and concepts. You begin to notice insight rising quietly, clarity appearing after prayer or stillness, guidance that feels true even before it makes sense, and a gentle knowing that says, This is the way. Frankincense is the inner sense that listens beneath the noise. It's not superstition, it's spiritual perception. It allows you to recognize truth without needing to argue for it. This is the function that learns how to follow the store. Now we have Myrrh, the release of the old self. Myrrh is considered the burial oil. It represents the ability to let go of identities that can no longer carry the Christ life. This is often the hardest function to awaken because Myrrh asks difficult questions. What habits must end? What patterns must rest? What version of you cannot move forward into this new season? But Myrrh is not about destruction. It's about honoring the past without living in it. It says, I think the old self for getting me here. I bless what was and I release it. So you thank your old self. You just say, hey, I'm thanking myself. You got me here, but now the lights come on and I'm moving in a new direction. And the mirror allows the old to sleep so the new can rise. Without this function, growth becomes impossible. The journey of the wise functions, well, these three functions travel together. And they move across the deserts of your mind through doubts, fears, and old conditioning, searching for the Christ self awakening in you. Not everyone is awakened, all three at the same time. Some people know their worth but lack spiritual perception. Some perceive spirit but refuse to release the past. And some try to die self without ever learning their value. But, beloved, after day two, after consent, something is stirring. The wise functions are waking up. And when they begin to move together, the journey towards wholeness truly begins. Gold represents value, not the value given by money, success, titles, or approval, not the value handed out by systems, institutions, or other people. Gold is inner worth. It is the quiet, unshakable knowing. I come from God. I am made of God. My life has meaning. I am not a mistake. There is something in me worth protecting and developing. This knowing does not shout, does not compete, it does not need to prove itself. It simply stands. The function of gold awakens in you. Something changes at the root of your behavior. You stop begging for validation and you stop chasing approval. You stop performing for acceptance and you stop shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. Not because you become hard or proud, but because you became anchored. You're no longer trying to earn your right to exist. You begin to live from the inside out. This is why people who awaken this function often seem calmer. They're not louder. They're not aggressive. They're not defensive. They're just settled. They know who they are, even if they are still becoming. Gold also changes how you relate to your past. When you know your divine value, you stop defining yourself by your worst moment. You stop living under old labels. You stop allowing shame to name you. You begin to say, hey, my past happened to me, but it's not who I am. My mistakes taught me, but they do not own me. And my wounds shape me, but they do not define me. This is spiritual maturity. Gold gives you the courage to stand in truth without attacking others. It gives you strength to remain gentle without becoming weak, and it gives you stability to grow without needing permission. This is why the wise man brings gold first, because until you know your worth, you cannot carry the Christ life responsibly. If you do not value yourself, you will abandon what God is building in you at the first sight of pressure. Gold teaches you to stay, to protect the life within you, to believe that what God is forming in you matters. This is not self worship, it is self recognition. It is remembering where you came from. And this knowing becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Without gold, the journey collapses. And with gold, the soul has something solid to stand on. Frankincense is the incense of the temple. In the ancient world, incense was burned to create an atmosphere where awareness could shift. It marked the space where heaven and earth were understood to meet. Metaphysically, frankincense represents the spiritual perception. It's not imagination. It is not emotional excitement. It is not an intellectual belief. It is an inner awareness. When this function awakens in you, spirit becomes real in a way that thinking alone can never produce. You do not just believe in God, you begin to sense God. You notice things changing quietly inside you. Insight rises without force. Peace settles without explanation. Clarity appears after prayer, meditation, or stillness, and gentle inner direction begins to form. Not a voice that shouts, not commands, but steadies inner knowing and what says, this is the way, walk here. This is what my scripture points to when it says, my sheep hear my voice, not with the ears of the body, but with the awareness of the soul. Frankincense is the awakening of your spiritual senses. You begin to see beyond appearances. You start to recognize what is real beneath what is loud. You sense truth before it is proven. You feel when something is aligned and when it is not. This does not make you superior. It makes you attentive. You become less reactive, less driven by fear, less controlled by urgency. You learn to pause and listen. Frankincense also teaches discernment. You stop absorbing everything that comes at you. You stop believing every thought you think, and you stop following every emotion that rises in you. You learn to wait for inner confirmation. This is why people with awakened spiritual perception often move more slowly. They are not indecisive, they're just listening. They understand that rushing leads to confusion, but awareness leads to clarity. Frankincense is also what keeps gold from turning into pride. You may know your worth, but frankincense teaches you how to walk humbly with that knowing. It reminds you that your life is guided and not self-directed, that wisdom flows from alignment and not control. This is the oil of revelation, not revelation that overwhelms, but revelation that gently unfolds. Frankincense does not force truth on you, it invites you to notice it. And as this function strengthens, your trust and inner guidance grows. You begin to rely on less noise and opinion and more on quiet awareness. This is the spiritual maturity. It's why frankincense is brought to the Christ, because the Christ life must be perceived, not just believed. And this perception prepares you for the final gift, the one that allows true transformation to take place. Myrrh is the bear oil. It's the most misunderstood gift of the three and often the most resisted because myrrh represents letting go, not punishment, not loss for the sake of loss, not self-hatred, but release. Myrrh asks a serious and honest question. What in me cannot go where I am being led? This is why this function feels heavy at first. It brings you face to face with reality. It asks you, what habits are you going to get rid of? Which coping patterns must end? Which identities were built for survival and not truth? And which versions of you were necessary once but are now too small? Every spiritual birth requires a spiritual funeral. There is no way around this. You cannot carry a new life while clinging tightly to an old self that was formed in fear. But hear this clearly. Myrrh does not destroy. Myrrh preserves. In ancient times, myrrh was used to prepare a body with honor. It was not violent. It was careful. It was reverent. Metaphysically, this tells us something important. God does not ask you to hate who you used to be. You do not shame the old self. You do not attack it. You do not pretend it never existed. You acknowledge it. You say, you got me through what I couldn't survive otherwise. You protected me when I didn't know how. You carried me when I was weak. And then gently, you let it rest. This is the sacred release. Myrrh allows you to lay down identities that no longer serve life. The identity built around anger, the identity built around proving yourself, the identity built around control, the identity built around being needed, wounded, or invisible. These selves were not evil. They were adaptive, but they cannot carry the Christ. They are too heavy. They are too reactive. They are too tied to the past. Myrrh also teaches patience. Death is not rushed. Transformation is not forced. When something truly dies in you, it does not leave chaos behind. It leaves space, space for new habits, space for new responses, space for a new way of seeing yourself. This is why people often feel quiet sadness during spiritual growth. Not despair, not depression, but grief. You're saying goodbye to who you thought you had to be. And that grief is holy because it means you are making room for who you are becoming. Myrrh completes the work of the wise functions. Gold gives you worth, frankincense gives you perception, and myrrh gives you freedom. Freedom from old cycles, freedom from old labels, and freedom from repeating the same life in different forms. This is what myrrh and why it's brought to the Christ. Because without death, there is no resurrection. Without release, there is no renewal. And without rest, there is no rising. The old must sleep so the new can stand. Wise men do not travel alone. This is not a small detail in the story. It is a spiritual principle. These three functions, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, are designed to work together. When one is missing, imbalance follows. If you have gold without frankincense, you know your worth, but lack guidance. You may become proud, defensive, or self-focused. You know you matter, but you do not listen well. You push instead of follow. You assert instead of align. If you have frankincense without myrrh, you may become spiritually aware but unwilling to change. You sense truth, you feel guidance, but you cling to old habits, old comforts, and old identities. This creates a spiritual life that feels inspired but never grounded. Insight without surrender leads to confusion. If you have myrrh without gold, you may constantly sacrifice yourself without ever honoring your value. You let go, you release, you die to old patterns, but you never step into the worth. This leads to exhaustion, self erasure, and quiet resentment. You keep giving things up, but you never fully live. This is why the wise men must travel together. Gold gives you stability, frankincense gives you direction, and the myrrh, as we said, it gives you the freedom. Together they form a balanced inner journey. Your worth is known. You do not walk in shame. Your vision is open, and you are not blindly reacting. Your attachments are released. You are not trapped by the past. This is wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge. Or wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is balance. Wisdom, a wise soul, knows when to stand firm, when to listen, and when to let go. This balance is what allows you to walk the desert without losing yourself. It was allows you to follow the star without burning out. It's what keeps you spiritual and the spiritual life from becoming extreme, rigid, or unstable. The wise men are not rushing, they're not arguing, and they're not competing with each other. They are moving together towards the same center, and so must you. Your worth must walk with your perception. Your perception must walk with your willingness to release. Your growth must be whole, not fragmented. This is how the journey stays true. This is how the Christ life matures safely. This is what makes the soul wise, not perfection, not certainty, but balance in motion. The star appears, the wise functions awaken, and then comes the desert. This is the part of the journey that surprises many people. Once you say yes to your inner Christ, life does not immediately become easier. In many cases, it becomes quieter, lonelier, and more uncomfortable. Why? Because everything that was built around your old identity begins to loosen. The desert represents the season where external supports fall away. Old sources of validation stop working. Old distractions lose their power, and old identifiers no longer fit. People who were comfortable with the old version of you may resist the change, not because they are evil, because your growth disrupts familiar patterns. Old habits try to pull you back. Old fears will rise up, and old doubts speak louder than before. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. means you are moving forward. Metaphysically, the desert is a place of stripping. It removes what is unnecessary. It exposes what is essential. It shows you what you were learning or leaning on instead of God. In the desert, you learn who you are without applause. You learn how to listen without noise, and you learn how to trust without proof. This is where dependency shifts. You stop depending on approval, you stop depending on control, and you stop depending on outcomes. You begin to depend on alignment. The desert also reveals motivation. Why are you following the star? Is it for comfort? Is it for recognition? Is it for escape? Or is it because you know deep down you cannot go back to who you were? This is where many people turn around, not because the path is wrong, but because the desert feels empty. But here it is clearly. Desert is not abandonment, it's preparation. In scripture, deserts are not places of punishment, they are places of formation. Moses was formed in the desert. Israel was shaped in the desert, and Jesus was tested in the desert. And the wise men crossed the desert. They don't go around it because wisdom is not formed in ease, it is formed in endurance. The desert teaches you how to carry gold without pride. It teaches you how to trust perception without certainty. It teaches you how to release attachment without fear. This is where the soul becomes steady, not because conditions improve, but because reliance is shifted. Beloved, if you are in a season where nothing outside seems to support the call you feel inside, I'm telling you, you are not lost. You are being refined. The desert does not last forever, but it lasts long enough to make sure that when you arrive, you are free. This is why wise men are always formed in the desert, not because the desert is the goal, but because the desert prepares you to receive what is ahead. Some days the stars feel close. Some days it feels far away. And some days it seems hidden behind clouds. Some days it shines with clarity and strength. This is not because the star is changing, it's because you are. Spiritual guidance does not operate on emotion, does not rise and fall with mood. It does not disappear because you feel tired, discouraged, or uncertain. The star is steady. What shifts is your perception. Your faith has seasons. Your energy changes. Your clarity comes and goes. Your confidence opens and closes, but guidance remains. Many people make a mistake here. They assume when they feel confused, God has withdrawn from them. They assume when they feel uncertain, they have lost direction, and they assume that when the path feels unclear, they just have failed. This is not how spiritual guidance works. The star does not promise constant emotional certainty. It promises direction. Sometimes that direction feels strong and obvious. Sometimes it feels subtle and quiet. Sometimes it feels like nothing more than just to keep going, not turn back, stay with what you know is true. And this is why your maturity is forming, your spiritual maturity, and you begin to learn the difference between feelings and faithfulness. Feelings fluctuate, alignment remains. Your emotions are real, but they are not the authority. Your clarity is valuable, but it is not the foundation. Obedience is not dramatic, it is steady. It is choosing to keep walking even when enthusiasm fades. It is choosing to stay aligned, even when motivation dips. It is choosing truth, even when the mind asks questions. This is why the wise men keep moving. They do not stop when the star dims. They do not turn back when the night grows long. They do not demand reassurance at every step. They trust the direction. Metaphysically, this teaches us something important. Guidance strengthens through practice. The more you follow the star, the more you learn how to recognize it, not through excitement, but through familiarity. You begin to sense when you are aligned. You begin to feel when something's off. You learn the difference between fear and intuition. You learn when to wait and when to move. This is wisdom. Beloved, if you are in a season where guidance feels faint, do not panic. Do not force clarity. Do not rush the decisions and do not assume abandonment. Stay with what you know. Remain faithful to the last light you were given. The star has not left you. It is simply teaching you how to walk by trust instead of your feelings. And as you continue, you will discover something quietly powerful. The star does not need to move faster. You are learning how to walk steadily. This is growth. That is wisdom. That is the mark of a soul that is maturing. In the old story, scripture tells us that the star stood still over the place where the child was. Then that detail matters because the star does not lead forever. There comes a moment in the spiritual journey when the searching ends, when the wandering quiets, and when the constant needs for signs fade. Not because guidance has disappeared, but because arrival has occurred. Metaphysically, this moment represents the inner alignment. You arrive at the place where the Christ is no longer something you are chasing, but something you are recognizing within yourself. This arrival is rarely dramatic. There is usually no thunder, no announcement, no applause. Instead, it feels simple. You notice a deep inner peace, not excitement, peace, a sense of steadiness, a calm clarity about your next step, not your whole future, just the next right movement. There is an inner knowing that says, this is it. I am where I need to be. I do not need to search the way I used to. You stop reaching outward for confirmation. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop asking everyone else what you should do, not because you know everything, but because you're aligned. This is the moment when trust replaces striving. The stars stop shining outside of you because its work is complete. It has led you to the place where the light is now within. From this point forward, guidance does not pull you from outside. It rises from the inside. You begin to live from an inner center. Decisions come more quietly. Choices feel clearer. Fear loses its authority. You may still face challenges. You may still walk through difficulty, but you are no longer lost inside yourself. This is the spiritual arrival, not the end of growth, but the end of confusion, not the end of questions, but the end of panic. The wise men do not stay staring at the star. They bow, they recognize, and they offer their gifts. And then they return by another way. Beloved, when the star stops for you, it does not mean the journey is over. It means a new way of living begins. You no longer follow the light, you carry it. And from that place, your life starts to move with purpose, not pressure, with clarity, not urgency, with trust, not fear. The Christ has been revealed, not only in the story, but in you. When the wise men arrive at the place where the child is, they do not speak first, they offer. This detail is very important because recognition without offering is incomplete. Metaphysically, this moment represents the point where an inner awareness becomes inner dedication. You are no longer just discovering the Christ within you. You are choosing to serve that light. This is your next step. You take the gold of your worth, not pride, not ego, but the settled knowing that your life matters. You place it before the Christ within you and say, I will not live as if I'm disposable. I will not abandon myself. I will honor the value you placed in me. Then you bring frankincense, your awakened perception, your intuition, your ability to listen and discern. You say, I will trust the guidance you give me. I will listen before I react. I will stay attentive instead of rushing. Then you bring the Christ within you, the mirror, the surrendered past, the identities you have laid down, the attachments you have released. And you say, I will not drag my old self into this new life. I will honor what I was, but I will not live there anymore. I release what cannot carry what you are forming in me. This is not self-sacrifice in the sense of loss. As I've said, this is alignment.
You are offering your whole self, not broken into pieces, not pretending, not hiding. You are saying, use it all, shape it all. I am here to serve the life rising in me. This is where your spiritual maturity begins. And the Christ life is not born simply to comfort you, it is born to live through you. And this offering is what allows that life to move freely. You are no longer resisting growth, you are cooperating with it. You are no longer afraid of what must change, you are willing. The wise men do not cling to their gifts, they release them. And in doing so, they participate in the unfolding of something greater than themselves. Beloved, when you offer your inner gifts this way, your life begins to organize around truth instead of fear. Your actions become simpler. Your choices become clearer. Your paths become steadier because you are no longer asking, what do I get? You are living from a deeper question. What am I here to give? And that is the posture of wisdom. That is how Christ within you begins to express itself in the world. Let's slow down and gather what we've learned because spiritual teachings only works when the pattern becomes visible. Day one taught us something essential. The night is not punishment. It is not failure. It is not abandonment. The night is a womb. It is a place where old forms dissolve and new life quietly begins. The darkness you have walked through was not working against you. It was preparing you. Day two took us deeper. It showed us that within every person there is a virgin place in the soul, a place untouched by shame, unclaimed by fear, and unwritten by the past. It is the place, and in that place, that the Christ life is conceived. When the soul says it's quiet, honest, yes, not through effort, not through perfection, but through consent. Now, day three completes the next movement. Once the Christ is conceived, guidance appears and the star rises, not as a map, not as a full explanation, but as a direction. Light enough for the next step, clarity enough to keep moving, guidance enough to stay aligned. Along with the star, the wise functions awaken. Gold, the knowing of your worth. The frankincense, the awakening of your perception. And the myrrh is the willingness to release what no longer fits you. These functions do not make you perfect, they make you wise. They teach you how to walk forward without losing yourself, how to grow without becoming rigid, and how to change without becoming unstable. And this is where the journey truly begins. Not the journey of becoming someone else, but the journey of becoming who you already were beneath all the noise. Day three is the movement from conception to direction, from inner agreement to outward motion, from stillness to steady walking. You're no longer wandering in the dark. You are no longer guessing blindly, and you are being led. And the most important truth of all is this: you are not following a distant star. You are responding to a light that has already begun to rise within you. That is the lesson of day three. The Christ has been conceived, the star has appeared, and the wise functions in you are now awake, and the journey of your new identity has begun. As we close tonight, I want to give you a simple practice, not something complicated, not something mystical, just something honest and quiet. This practice is not about effort, it's about attention. Tonight, beloved, before you sleep, before you reach your phone, before you distract yourself from the silence, allow yourself to feel moments of stillness. Sit or lie down comfortably. Let the room be dim or dark. Place one hand gently over your heart. Do not rush this. Feel your breathing. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Let your body settle. Then quietly, either out loud or in your heart, say these words: God, show me the star you have placed within me. Help me recognize the gold of my worth, the frankincense of my intuition, and the myrrh of what I must release. Lead me to the Christ rising in me. Say it slowly, say it sincerely, and say it without trying to feel anything special. Then be still. You do not need an answer. You don't need a picture. And you don't need a voice. This is not about seeing the whole journey. Remember what we have learned. The star does not reveal everything at once. What you may feel instead is your direction, a gentle sense of alignment, and that quiet clarity about something you already know, a soft awareness of what no longer fits, a peaceful sense of where not to go anymore. This is enough. Guidance does not always come as information. Often it comes as orientation. You may notice over time that certain thoughts lose their grip, certain fears feel less urgent, and certain choices feel more obvious. That is the star working. If you fall asleep during this practice, that is perfectly fine. The soul listens even when the mind rests. And if nothing feels different tonight, do not judge the practice. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Return to this practice tomorrow night and the next and the next, not to force an outcome, but to stay oriented toward the light within you. Beloved, you do not have to chase the star. You only have to follow it, one quiet step at a time. Brothers and sisters, this message is speaking to you. If something in you recognizes the movement we have been describing, if you feel that quiet pull towards truth, clarity, and alignment, know that you are not imagining it. The star does not rise for everyone at the same time. It rises when the soul is ready to follow. And if the star is rising in you, you do not have to walk this path alone. This week is a journey. Each night builds upon the last. We're only on day 3. We have moved from the night to conception to guidance. And now the journey continues. Tomorrow we will turn our attentions to Herod, the inner force that feels threatened by the new light, the part of the ego that fears change, control, and the loss of the old power. This is an important threshold because whenever something true begins to grow in you, something false will try to stop it. Understanding this is not about fear, it's about awareness. So I invite you to stay with us, return tomorrow night, continue the journey, let the story unfold within you step by step. And until then, remember this: you do not need to force clarity, you do not need to rush the process, and you do not need to prove anything to anyone. You only need to stay oriented toward the light you have been given. Follow the star quietly, faithfully, one step at a time, and rest well tonight. And with that, I'll see you tomorrow.